Welcome, AXA family and friends, to Common Purpose, Uncommon Times. I'm Wes Smith, and as always, honored to serve as Executive Director of AXA. Really excited. I'm excited every week that we do this. I love the conversations we have. I learn from everybody that's been on the program, but tonight's especially exciting for me. We've been talking about the rights and needs of our students on this show for about 7 months. And tonight we're going to hear from them. We've got some amazing students who are going to be here with us tonight, sharing insights. They're representatives from the California Association of Student Councils. Some great students, but we'll get to them in just a minute and lift up the student voice in California. A couple of announcements this week: our AXA campus tour. Those are on Tuesday, remember, on Facebook and on YouTube. We'll have Sam Perdomo, principal of Foothill Middle School in the Azusa Unified School District, where I started teaching. So love Azusa Unified. Tune in and watch that on Tuesday. Wednesday, we have our AXA legislative lunch break. That's usually just Naj and Edgar doing that, but they've got a special guest this week, none other than the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurman. So that'll be a great lunch break. Make sure you tune in there. I'm sure they'll be talking about the attendance accounting issue that so many of you are working through, as well as where we're headed. I'm sure they'll talk about the digital divide and the efforts at CDE to connect students and families across the state to address those inequities in our system. So that should be a lot of fun, great information. Tune in Wednesday for that. I want to thank everybody that went to the Personnel Institute last week. Again, when I say went to, I got in front of your screens and attended. By all accounts, it went well. People learned a lot, people shared a lot. It's our first large-scale virtual conference like that, and the team and our membership knocked it out of the park. So I'm grateful for all of you who attended and for the staff and members that made that happen. Let's not forget that we have our Leadership Summit, and you can get online right now and sign up for that. You can register. As we say, plenty of great seats available at the Leadership Summit. There's a link right there for you to get involved. We want to also encourage you tonight, as you're listening to the students, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and we'll try to feed those to the students as well. But because we're so excited to have them, I want to get right to our panel tonight. So without further ado, the representatives from the California Association of Student Councils. We have Leah Perez joining us tonight. We have Diego Bustamante, and we have Coleman Sun. So welcome to our students, and we'll get right at it. Leah, why don't we start with you? Tell us a bit about you, your role in CASC, and your plan for post-high school. Where are you headed?
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Leah Perez. I am a senior at Shasta High School in Redding, California, and I am the Region 1 president for CASC. And then after high school, I'd like to go to a four-year university and double major in political science and mathematics.
Thank you. Diego, how about you? What's your, where do you go to high school? What do you do in CASC? Where are you headed after high school?
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Diego Bustamante. I go to Lincoln High School in Stockton, California. And as far as my plans for after high school, like Leah, I want to go to a four-year university, but I'm a STEM guy, so I plan on going into biochem and hopefully doing research after.
Right on. Thank you, Diego. And Coleman, introduce yourself to the AXA family.
Yeah, so hi. Also, first of all, thank you for having me. I currently go to Northwood High School in Irvine, California, and my plans for following high school are either, I'm planning on going to a four-year university, currently deciding between political science and international relations. May do both at the same time, but that seems like a lot.
Awesome. Coleman, since we're with you, let's stay with you. Tell us about your pandemic story, if you will. What happened in the spring in your school? How did the shelter in place affect you, the indecision of reopening in the spring and even in the summer? Share with us your pandemic story.
Yeah, absolutely. My pandemic story opens up with actually our school bursting into celebration the day we heard the news that school would not be returning. But at the time, it is initially, we were all under the impression that we would be returning in 2 weeks. Obviously, that's not the case, as we are now X amount of months into the at-home distance education. So it was originally opened up with celebration. It ended up leading to a rather, in my opinion, and a lot of our teachers' opinions, a rather like messy. Yeah, it was a rather messy organization in terms of our distance learning, because all of our teachers and all of our administrators were rather caught off guard by the sudden transition to a completely virtual platform. People didn't know whether to use Zoom. People didn't have premium Zoom accounts. It was just logistically a little bit difficult to transition to. But about right around the end of the end of May, right before school ended, we did end up getting our stuff together, managed to do finals, managed to do AP exams. I think that our administrators did end up managing it in a very proper manner. I guess it was by no means smooth. It was by no means a smooth transition, but it eventually did lead to us getting some form of education. And and then now we're into the next year. And my district's currently in hybrid study, but that's about it.
Thank you, Colvin. You know, and I like how you described that, messy. That's a very political way to say that. It could be described in a lot of other ways. And it was messy all over the state because, you know, again, and you probably know this because you students are involved in leadership, school district leaders around the state were given no playbook for school closure. The state didn't make the determination to close schools and was even somewhat critical of schools that stepped up and led absent statewide leadership. So people were learning as they went. And I'm sure, Coleman, that you know, thinking it's 2 weeks, it ends up being, you know, 7 months, was concerning for folks. Kind of like we call it the yo-yo effect. We think we're coming back and then we're not, and we think we're coming back and we're not. So thank you for that characterization. Diego, how about you? What was your story?
Yeah, so like Cole, I classify it as messy. We first got let out from school on March 13th under what we thought was just an extended spring break. We ended up not coming back until April, once the district kind of like figured out what it was doing and decided to move to online learning. But it was not effective teaching at all. There was really no accountability on the end of making sure that students were present and doing their work. So it was really just like optional school. And I definitely felt a decline in the quality of my education. Like Cole was saying, we were eventually able to kind of like tie things back together ahead of AP tests. And we didn't even end up having finals. It was just, it felt like, I don't know, school light. It was very lackluster education, and it was really disappointing because up until that point, that's my junior year had been incredibly engaging and had really pushed me to do better than I had in any previous years. So that was a very disappointing end to my year. But now that we've come back under like a new distance learning model, I've definitely been more satisfied with how things have turned out.
Yeah, thanks for that, Diego. Thanks for the honesty, and I bet to a person, the teachers in the district were just as frustrated. You know, they didn't know this was going to happen, and you know, many of them had no training whatsoever in distance or online learning. I think about my own dad. My dad taught for 44 years at the high school level. And if that had happened to him, he's been retired for some years. And someone said, "Hey, you've got to teach online right now." I'm pretty sure he would have retired that day, because he would, whenever he needs to, turn on a computer, even he asks for help. He still has a flip phone because he thinks that smartphones are evil. So there he is with his 1992 flip phone. And so I bet the teachers felt like that as well. Leah, how about you? What was your experience in the spring and summer?
Yeah, so I had a pretty similar experience with Cole and Diego. My school first got put onto distance in the third week of March, and for the 2 weeks after that, we went on to an enrichment period, so nothing was required. Every piece of schoolwork that was assigned was optional. And after that, we ended up having required work. And so for those 2 weeks, a lot of people, we didn't do much of anything because we didn't need to. And that probably wasn't a great thing for a lot of us, just because of our ability to learn definitely diminished for the rest of the year after those 2 weeks. And we ended up having Zooms with our teachers. Basically, 2 days a week was the maximum with any given teacher. And even at that, it's really inconsistent. We had some teachers who did no Zooms at all the entire time since March 13th when we went on to distance learning. And we had some who were really great with us and spent a lot of time with us on Zoom. So there's just a lot of inconsistency that I think I felt along with many of my peers. And ultimately, I do think we pulled through at the end. We got our tests done, but finals were basically non-existent. And yeah, the end of the year was sort of a letdown compared to what a lot of us wanted and were expecting.
Yeah, Leah, thank you for that. And by the way, I didn't mention this, but I have a son who's a senior. So I get to see it from not only an educator perspective, but as a dad. And the things that the three of you are sharing are very, very consistent with how he felt and what he saw. And Leah, because I know your school district pretty well, I know how hard leadership in the district site and district were working to mitigate that loss of learning in the spring, to finish the year strong, and then to get ready for the school year. In fact, I was mentioning this, Leah, to you before we broadcast it. Your superintendent was a part of our reopening planning group that helped statewide folks figure out the models, what was possible, and the considerations that needed to be made with that. Let's jump into that. Speaking of these models, and you've referenced it now, and Nadine Rosenzweig asked this question. Tell us what model your school has picked. Now we're in the fall, so we had the summer to get ready. What is this reopening plan for you, and how's it going for you, for the students? Let's start with, let's mix it up. Let's go, Diego. Let's go with you first. What is your school's model now in the fall? How's it going for you? What are the plans moving forward?
Yeah, so during the summer, in the weeks leading up to August 5th, which was our date of return, a plan was released by our administration saying that we'd come back on a hybrid model. But after the state made some recommendations and mandated some things, we ended up just moving fully online probably 2 weeks before school started. And basically the administration took a regular school day and threw it on Zoom. So right now we have 7 periods a day, every day, Monday to Friday. And it's honestly incredibly taxing. If you take a full schedule, which I'm doing, which is 7 periods, that ends up being 8 hours on or staring at a screen, plus any additional work, which is pretty much all online. So it's incredibly taxing physically, just sitting so long and then staring at a screen so long. That being said, it has been really effective in terms of teaching. I feel like I've learned a lot, but I think that is really just reflective of my decisions as a student. Teachers have been providing work that is effective for learning, and as long as you put the time in and make the effort to do the work, it has been effective for me to learn. So yeah, that's been my model.
That's good news, Diego. I mean, as we heard you talk about the spring and the closure and the disappointment, it sounds like there is some academic rigor for you in the fall, which is great. Although being in front of these computers all day and sitting in our chairs, especially as you get like my age, and I'm just a bit older than the three of you, it is not easy. So we certainly feel for you. Coleman, how about you? What's your school's design? How's it working? How's it working for you folks? What's the plan moving forward?
Yeah, so for our school, we've transitioned into a hybrid setting. So school functions essentially Tuesday through Friday. Monday is just office hours plus checking in for attendance with your homeroom, and then that's it. But Tuesday through Friday is when you have lectures, whether they be virtual or in person. Our school has divided our school into two cohorts. So last names A through, I believe, L, and then M to Z. It's some division. It's divided the school into two cohorts, and the first cohort goes in person to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and is virtual on Wednesdays and Fridays, and then vice versa for the second cohort. It's a little bit interesting because if you're in person, for some classes, you still have to join the Zoom call from your laptop, which you take to in-person school, which is interesting because it's kind of just Zooming from school.
Interesting.
It's a little interesting, but some other classes tend to also like have a hybrid structure or have a structure in which you are engaging in class, almost like the teacher's running two classes at the same time, where they're engaging with the students that are in person and engaging with the students that are on the virtual Zoom call. So it's for those teachers that are running it that way, I feel like they might be under a little bit of additional stress just because like I said, it's essentially running two classes at the same time. You're having to look at the Zoom call over here, having to talk to the students in the classroom, looking back and forth over and over. So I've been finding some of my teachers under a bit of stress, but that's kind of the structure we're in right now. It's a little interesting.
Colton, that's very nice of you to be thinking about how it's affecting them. You know, I think we're all better served when we're empathetic, when we understand that everybody's going through something in this reality. No one is unaffected. So that was very cool of you. Leah, you mentioned your plan, but tell us a bit more about how the fall is going for you and your classmates. How well is it going?
Yeah, so my school is on hybrid. My whole district is on hybrid, actually. And it's going pretty well. There's things that work well and things that could work better. My hybrid schedule works so that on Wednesdays, the whole school is on distance learnings. And then like Coleman's school, we have two different blocks divided based on our last names. So Block A goes to school on Mondays and Thursdays, and Block B goes to school on Tuesdays and Fridays. With that, we do have a very small number of teachers who are live streaming classes. So they're on Zoom and teaching the in-person class at the same time. Most teachers, however, don't do that. What we'll have them do is pre-record lectures, and then they'll submit those on their Google Classroom. One thing I do like about hybrid, though, is the flexibility that we have on our distance days. Just having the ability to do your homework or classwork at the time that you would like to do it. With that, though, there does have some issues with like procrastinating or sleeping in too late. So it does make it a little bit hard for, I'd say, almost all high school students for us to handle that.
Wow, thank you. Lee, I'm going to stay with you. Look, as I said just a second ago, everybody is affected by this, right? And students have all kinds of concerns about, as we've been talking about here, education, loss of learning. what they're going to do next year. My son's auditioning for colleges online, where he'd typically be there singing, dancing, acting. Now he's doing it on a Zoom. So Leah, what would you say is the greatest concern of your classmates? It can be about academics, but it can be about anything. What concerns them the most?
I'd say right now, I mean, it's probably the virus itself. We've had a couple of people test positive at school, and I know that does concern a lot of students. And that's something more recent. So like that's something that I'd say we're probably most concerned about right now. But other than that, I'd say a lot of us are just concerned about being able to learn. We want to be able to learn the same way that we learned a year ago when we were all in person in class. And I know we can't do that because of coronavirus, but that's probably our biggest concern, just because it is harder for a lot of the students to learn. And just this year, all of our teachers have been telling us about the amount of deficiencies that went out this quarter, which was a lot larger than normal. So that it's probably one of the biggest concerns that my peers and I have.
Okay. Coleman, how about you? Well, what are your peers most concerned by?
I think the biggest concerns right now for everyone in general, including myself, would be coronavirus again, just because at least part of it has to do with the way my school specifically is structured. There is basically a main quad, and then there's classrooms that surround it. So, and when you're off class, when you're outside of class on a break, everyone is required to be in this set quad. You can't be like huddling around your classrooms or anything, which in my opinion is not ideal. So it tends to get very crowded, especially because our school, or my cohort alone, is over 1,000 students. It's like 1,000 students are huddled in this singular area. A lot of students of which are not socially distanced because, well, you're asking a bunch of socially deprived teenagers to come back to school. A lot of them will end up being inevitably irresponsible with social distancing and coronavirus guidelines. So I think the biggest concern that I've had and a lot of my close friends have had is just contracting the virus. I think there have been 2 cases in my district, not at our school, one at an elementary school, one at a high school. So there is a lot of fear of just getting sick because, well, it's a serious matter. So that's the biggest thing.
Thanks. Diego, how about you? What's most concerning for your peers?
Unlike Coleman and Leah, my school is fully online. So my classmates haven't or don't really consider COVID spreading because of school to be one of the main pressing issues. It's really just been, though it sounds kind of selfish, that social aspect of school and being able to communicate with other students. Classes have really just turned into hour-long lectures where there's very little communication between students because, I mean, it's just online lectures. You can't really whisper to your neighbor or whatever. So that's really been the concern for students at my school is getting the chance to interact with other seniors and other classmates during this year.
Thank you. I want to ask you about CASC initiatives, efforts, programs. We're getting towards the end of our time together, but I wanted to, because we're talking about safety, weave in here a question that Stan Rose asked, which is, what could be done, what could be put in place for schools to reopen more safely? It was a question that President Biden asked. So as you share something that CASC is doing, also think about if you have advice for something that could be done to help schools open physically safely. So an idea you have there. So CASC, what's happening, and an idea, if you have one, for reopening physically safely. Coleman, let's start with you. What's happening with CASC? Give us an initiative or an effort, please.
Yeah. So with CASC, we're in terms of organization, we're divided into two sections, our executive side, our state side. Our executive team tends to focus on our statewide conferences, so our legislative platforms for students. For example, SABE, which is a student advisor on the Board of Education, or SABLE, our sister conference, which we present to the Senate or the Board of Education. Those conferences, we've decided to transition to a completely online setting. I believe Diego can talk a little bit about this because he is the director of these conferences. As for our state side, we divide it. Our CASC is divided into 12 different regions across California, and each region is covered by a region president and a region cabinet. In each region, there are 2 conferences that are held each year. So we're currently in the process of going through our fall conferences, whether they be student advocacy conferences or leadership conferences, where we present our curriculum to delegates. All of our fall conferences thus far have been virtual, and yeah, that's kind of all I have for CASC so far, right? And then in terms of reopening policy, I think my district has handled it pretty well. I think that there just has to be some form of additional enforcement. So from staff members, I think there has to be like a unified effort, because honestly, in the end, our humanity's battle against COVID-19 it's a group effort. It's not like one individual can solve it. It's a group effort. And in my opinion, I think everyone just has to understand, whether it be a student or teacher or an administrator, that this is something serious and we all need to stand up against it. So staffers telling students to step apart and stuff like that. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Diego, you just were handed the baton by Coleman. Tell us a bit more about CASC and if you have an idea.
Yeah, so like Coleman was saying, the Student Advisory Board on Education is a program that's coming up soon. It's actually taking place on October 31st. And at this program, students from across the state come together and talk about the issues that they identify within the education system, like we're doing right now, except that they get to create formal policy proposals that are then presented directly to the Board of Education. If you want to find out more about that and like send students to that, you visit casc.net/SABE, SABE. As far as how I think schools can approach reopening safely, like I was saying before, we're still completely digital. But if we were to begin going back in person, I think a hybrid model is the best option. You can really only prevent the spread of coronavirus by limiting groups down to smaller sizes, so that there's less risk of transmission. I don't think there's any way we can open up full capacity until there's a vaccine. And along with that, like Cole was saying, we really need a unified message so that everyone can get on the same page. We need to defeat this virus so that we can finally get back into classrooms. And until everyone's on the same page, I don't think we're really going to be able to do that.
Thank you. Leah, how about you? Something about CASC and or an idea that you have for the system?
Yeah, so for CASC, Cole kind of touched on this with our region conferences. I actually directed my Region 1 conference like a week and a half ago now. And that went really well. We were pretty successful in just transferring everything that would be in person to an online setting. So that's kind of what we're doing in CASC. I mean, Diego and Cole really covered that pretty well. In terms of what we can do to see schools safely reopen, I definitely feel like, again, what Diego said is true with having smaller groups. I think that's part of the biggest things. And just probably another thing is even less on the responsibility of the students and the staff, but just having the whole community take the virus seriously as a whole, I think is such a big factor, just because students don't spend all day in school. Like after they leave school, they go around other places. And I think that's ultimately, it has to be the whole community to make the schools open safely.
Thank you. Thank you for that. The last question we always ask on common purpose is what gives you hope. And I'll start as I always do and just say that, and all of my AXA family know this is where I'm going to go tonight, but you give me hope. Your leadership, your empathy, your courage, who you are. I got into this work to serve students, period, hard stop. You're the reason why our members do everything that they do. And having you on tonight was hope inspiring. So thank you. Leah, bring us home. What gives you hope?
I have hope for going back to school in person full time, maybe in the spring. That's what gives me hope.
Cool. All right. Diego, how about you? What gives you hope, man?
I've been really impressed by how seriously teachers and students have been taking learning. It's so difficult in the face of all the challenges we have with distance learning to stay on task and stay productive. But I think teachers and students, at least for the most part, students have really made an effort to make sure that their education is still good. So that gives me hope.
And Coleman, how about you?
Similarly to yourself, actually, I think that it's weird coming from my own perspective as a student and as youth, but I think that the people around me, the youth, especially here at CASC and the people at my school, they give me a lot of hope because, well, these are the future of humanity. These are the people that will eventually be leading our society. And the way that people have been standing up for each other, have been standing against, I guess, in our district specifically, rather unfortunate policies that have gone through. It's been very inspiring for me to sit through and witness. And I honestly off of that observation, I commit more to my work here at CASC in order to empower others around me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. AXA family and friends, help me welcome our CASC representatives for taking time away. As Diego said, they're in front of a computer all day, and they gave up an hour of their time tonight to share their insights with you. I'll tell you, it's because of these 3 students and their 6.3 million peers. It's because of all of you out in the field doing what you do that, as I've said since the beginning of this broadcast, we're not going to just get through this and survive it. We are absolutely going to thrive. I have no doubt in my mind. So thank you all. Our students need to get to homework. Some of you need to get to bed. No, that's not a slam on my older friends out there. I'm just saying, I know your capacity. But we did want to share something with you to close out tonight. One of the things that we love to do at the Leadership Summit is watch the recognition of the every student succeeding. You want to talk about inspirational students. They define every student succeeding. We've got a video of Brandon Thatcher that we want to show you tonight. We have 5 of these videos we'll be sharing with you because of the pandemic and travel restrictions and the safety. We can't go do videos of every student like we have. We will do interviews. We will recognize them at the summit. But here's one of the videos. Take a look at this if you're struggling to find inspiration tonight. Let's see this from our Region 1 winner, Brandon Thatcher.
Brandon lives down off of Parkview. It's can be one of the rougher parts of the city. He'll leave his house at 5:15 in the morning, especially during wrestling season, to get here to practice in the morning.
I get really sweaty getting to school every day, and my legs kind of hurt going up the hills. Get him flat, Brandon, get him flat!
To see a kid that has that many things stacked against him, and just to have seen, even last year at one point, he was homeless.
My mom kind of had some problems she was facing, and it made it a little difficult to grow up. Well, it was just really hard to keep living there because of the drinking. It was really hard to live with that every day.
He never complained about it, not once, and came to school every day with a smile on his face.
You just gotta remember that everyone around you is going through stuff too, and you're not the only one that has problems.
So let's just keep doing that when I start recording.
Growing up, I always got kind of nervous, and I used to be really shy around people. So it kind of made my voice eventually like frizzle up and start like talking really high pitched.
Tell me your favorite thing to have for dinner.
Meatloaf.
The technical term is it's a delayed mutational falsetto. When you go through puberty, your mechanism doesn't drop, and so your voice stays really high. That's the simple term for it.
I think I made a really big improvement with my voice. Miss Doherty's been really nice to me, and we worked really hard every day working on my voice. And it's really made me feel better, like, around people.
Sometimes when you do therapy and with kids and you don't see a lot of progress, it's hard and you think, what am I doing in my job? But then you get a Brandon and you go, oh, this is why I do this.
His optimism and positive outlook on life, you can't teach that to somebody. He just has it.
He has resilience built into him that is just there. And I don't know where that comes from. Not all kids have that. He has it.
I just feel like it doesn't really make sense to give up on your goals when times are tough, because that's what the rest of life is gonna be like. It's all gonna be a big challenge leading up to something great, so why don't you just go all or nothing?
Congratulations to Brandon Thatcher, our Region 1 Every Student Succeeding winner. By the way, I want to thank all the educators who have and continue to support Brandon, and all of you who continue to support your students equally. 20 hours of live content at the AXA Leadership Summit. You can sign up now. Naj and Michael will be anchoring that coverage November 5th and 6th. Everybody, please be well, stay safe. We'll see you next week on Common Purpose, Uncommon Times.